Earth's seat was always empty. The reason frightened the galaxy. Part 1. The Great Hall of Station Meridian floated in the empty space between 12 star systems. It was the largest structure ever built by the allied races of the galaxy. Every year, for 300 years, representatives from dozens of civilizations gathered here to discuss trade, war, peace, and the future of all living things. Ambassador Al of the had attended these meetings for 60 years. His body was made of living crystal, and his species was among the oldest in the galaxy. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched young civilizations take their first steps into space. He had witnessed treaties signed and broken, wars started and ended. But in all his years, one mystery had never been solved. At the center of the great circular chamber stood a single chair. It was made from a strange metal that no one could identify. The chair was beautiful, crafted with care and respect. A small marker in front of it read simply, Earth. The chair had never been used, not once in 300 years. Al remembered the day humanity had first appeared. Their ships had crossed into charted space with primitive but effective faster-than-light engines. The assembly had watched with interest as these strange, soft-bodied creatures established their first colony outside their home system. They seemed friendly enough, curious, eager to explore. The assembly had sent an invitation, as they did with all new spacefaring species. Join us, the message said. Take your seat among the stars. Together we are stronger. The humans had received the message. They had acknowledged it. And then they had done something no species had ever done before. They said no. Not rudely, not with anger or fear. They simply declined, saying they preferred to handle their own affairs. They would trade with border worlds. They would maintain peaceful relations, but they would not join the assembly. At first, the other species had assumed this was temporary. Young civilizations often needed time to adjust to the idea of a galactic community, but years passed, then decades, then centuries. Human colonies spread across 47 worlds. Their technology advanced rapidly, matching and sometimes exceeding what the elder races possessed. And still the chair remained empty. High Minister of the Collective was speaking now, his 4 arms gesturing as he made some point about mining rights in a disputed sector. Al barely listened. His attention kept drifting to that empty seat. "You are distracted, old friend," said Director of the Empire. She had taken the seat beside him, her scaled skin shimmering under the chamber's lights, still thinking about the humans. "Always," Al admitted. "Does it not trouble you? 300 years and we still do not understand them." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "They are simply arrogant, a young species that believes it does not need us. They will learn eventually." Perhaps. Al was not convinced. "We have sent 17 delegations to Earth over the centuries. 17 times our best diplomats have visited there. And 17 times they have returned empty-handed," said. "The humans are stubborn." "That is not what troubles me." Al turned his crystalline head to look at her directly. "What troubles me is how those diplomats changed after they returned." Scales shifted color, a sign of unease. "I do not know what you mean." "Yes, you do. Ambassador of the visited Earth 40 years ago. He was your finest diplomat, confident and ambitious. When he returned, he resigned his position within 3 months. He spent his remaining years staring at star charts and refusing to speak about what he had seen. Said nothing. It happened to others as well," Al continued. "Even the machine minds of the swarm. Everyone who visited Earth came back different, quieter. Some seemed afraid, others seemed smaller somehow, as if they had seen something that made everything else seem unimportant." "Perhaps humans are simply good hosts," said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Perhaps they showed our diplomats wonders that made their old lives seem dull. Or perhaps they showed them something terrible." The session ended and the representatives filed out of the chamber. Al remained behind, as he often did, standing before the empty chair. He reached out and touched its surface. The metal was cool and smooth, and it seemed to hum slightly under his touch. "What are you hiding?" he wondered. "What secret is so great that you would separate yourselves from all other life in the galaxy?" He might never have learned the answer. The mystery might have continued for another 300 years, passed down from one generation of confused diplomats to the next. But fate had other plans. The first reports came in 3 days later. A border world called IV had gone silent. All communication had ceased within hours. When a patrol ship was sent to investigate, it found nothing but debris where 3 billion people had lived. At first, the assembly thought it was an accident, a natural disaster perhaps, or some kind of weapon malfunction. But then another world went silent, and another, and another. Within 2 weeks, 14 planets had been destroyed. The survivors who managed to flee described nightmares. Black ships that blocked out the stars. Machines that devoured everything in their path: metal, rock, flesh. A swarm of mechanical horrors that seemed to have no purpose except destruction. The elder races searched their histories and found the name: the Void Swarm. It was a legend, a story told to frighten children. 50,000 years ago, before any current civilization existed, the swarm had swept across the galaxy. They were self-replicating machines, building more of themselves from the worlds they consumed. Entire species had been wiped from existence. The galaxy had nearly died. And then, for reasons no one understood, the swarm had gone dormant. They had retreated to the dark spaces between stars and fallen silent. Now they were awake. The assembly gathered in emergency session. Fear filled the great chamber. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding action, demanding explanations, demanding someone to blame. Al sat in silence, watching the chaos. He thought about the empty chair. He thought about the diplomats who had returned from Earth changed and afraid. He thought about a species that had expanded across 47 worlds without ever asking for help, without ever seeking protection from the greater powers of the galaxy. A species that had always seemed to be preparing for something. When the shouting finally died down, Al rose to speak. "We must contact the humans," he said. "We must ask them for help." The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to look at him. "The humans," his voice dripped with disbelief. "They have 47 worlds. We had thousands. What could they possibly do against the Void Swarm?" "I do not know," Al admitted. "But I believe they do. I believe this is why they have stayed apart from us. I believe they have been waiting for this moment." He looked at the empty chair. "I believe they know something we do not. And I believe our survival depends on learning what it is." The message was sent that night. For the first time in 300 years, the Galactic Assembly formally requested humanity's presence. And for the first time in 300 years, humanity said yes. Earth's seat was always empty. The reason frightened the galaxy. Part 2. The weeks that followed the Assembly's message were the darkest in living memory. The Void Swarm moved through space like a disease, spreading from system to system with terrible speed. Their black ships numbered in the millions, each one a factory that consumed raw materials and produced more ships. Planets that had existed for billions of years were stripped bare in days, their rocks and metals transformed into new machines of destruction. The combined fleets of the Assembly gathered at Prime, a fortress world at the heart of space. 80,000 warships from every member civilization formed a defensive line. It was the largest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the swarm continued forward as if nothing had happened. Behind them, the wreckage of 80,000 ships drifted in the void. Millions of soldiers from dozens of species had died, and they had not even slowed the enemy down. Al received the news in his private quarters. He sat in darkness for a long time, trying to understand what it meant. The greatest fleet in history, destroyed in a single afternoon. The combined might of every civilization in the galaxy, brushed aside like insects. How could anything stop such a force? His thoughts were interrupted by a message. The human representative had arrived at Station Meridian. Al made his way to the great chamber. The other representatives were already there, seated in their traditional places. The mood was desperate. Many had lost or colonies to the swarm. Others knew it was only a matter of time before the machines reached their territory. The doors opened, and the human walked in. Her name was Lisa Warren, and she did not look impressive. She was small, even by human standards, with gray streaks in her dark hair and deep lines around her eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations except a small patch showing a blue and green planet. She walked alone, no guards, no assistants, no fleet waiting outside to demonstrate human power. The representatives watched in silence as she crossed the chamber floor. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. When she reached the center, she stopped and looked at the chair that had been empty for 3 centuries. She touched it gently, almost lovingly, then she sat down. "My name is Lisa Warren," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I represent humanity. I understand you have a problem." High Minister rose from his seat. His 4 arms trembled with barely controlled emotion. "A problem. Director Warren, the Void Swarm has destroyed 23 worlds. Our combined fleets have been annihilated. Billions have died. We face the extinction of every living thing in the galaxy. And you call this a problem?" Lisa Warren looked at him with eyes that seemed very old. "Yes, a problem. One we have been dealing with for a very long time." The chamber went still. "Before I continue," Lisa said, "I need to explain something. For 300 years, humanity has refused to join this assembly. We have kept our distance. We have traded with your border worlds and maintained peaceful relations, but we have never participated in your politics or your wars." She paused. "There was a reason for this." "We assumed it was arrogance," Director said coldly. "A young species that believed itself above us." "No," Lisa shook her head. "It was protection. We stayed away because we did not want you to know the truth about us. We did not want you to see what we had become." She stood and walked to the center of the chamber, where a holographic display could project images for all to see. She touched a control on her wrist, and the display activated. "Humanity discovered faster-than-light travel 400 years ago," she said. "We spread quickly through the galaxy, exploring, mapping, learning. We found your civilizations. We found the assembly. We also found the Void Swarm." The holographic display showed a star map. A region of space far from assembly territory was highlighted in red. 280 years ago, one of our exploration ships entered this region. They discovered a swarm nexus, a central hub where the machines were dormant but intact. The ship's presence activated the defense systems. Lisa's voice was flat, emotionless. "The swarm woke up. They pursued our ship back to human territory, and then they attacked." "You woke them," said. His voice was barely a whisper. "You did this." "Yes." Lisa did not flinch from the accusation. "We woke them, and when they attacked our colonies, we had a choice to make. We could flee, as the ancient civilizations did. We could try to hide and hope the swarm would lose interest, or we could fight." She touched her wrist again. The display changed to show ship designs unlike anything the assembly had ever seen. Massive vessels bristling with weapons. Smaller craft that seemed designed for speed and aggression. Stations that dwarfed planets. "We chose to fight," Lisa said. "For 280 years, humanity has been at war with the Void Swarm. Not a defensive war, not a war of survival, a war of extermination." The images changed again, showing battles. Human ships engaging swarm vessels in the dark between stars. Weapons that tore holes in reality. Explosions that consumed entire fleets. We built weapons that should not exist, Lisa continued. We developed technologies that would terrify you. We sacrificed 31 of our own colonies, destroying them completely to deny the swarm resources. We have lost over 400 million soldiers in direct combat over 3 centuries. She turned to face the assembly. And we have been winning. The silence in the chamber was absolute. The swarm you face now is not the full strength of the machine intelligence. It is a fragment, a broken piece that escaped our hunting fleets. Lisa's eyes swept across the representatives. They are running from us. You were simply in their path. Al found his voice. Why did you not tell us? Why did you let us face this threat alone? Because we were ashamed. Lisa's voice finally showed emotion, a deep, weary sadness. We woke the swarm. We should have contained them. We should have destroyed them before they ever reached your space. We failed, and billions of your people paid the price for our failure. She walked back to the chair and sat down heavily. We stayed away from this assembly because we did not want you to see what humanity had become. We are not the curious explorers who first reached the stars. We are something else now, something harder, something darker. She looked at Al directly. We have spent 3 centuries learning to kill. We have become very good at it. And now, Director asked, why reveal yourselves now? Because the war is almost over, Lisa said. Our hunting fleets are converging on this sector. Within 6 months, every swarm unit in assembly space will be destroyed. And within 18 months, we will reach their central nexus, the place where they were born, and we will end them forever. She leaned forward. But when our fleets arrive, you will see us as we truly are. You will see warships that could destroy your stations with a single shot. You will see weapons that violate every law of physics you thought you understood. You will see soldiers who have known nothing but war for their entire lives. Her voice softened. You will be afraid of us. Everyone is. That is why we stayed away. We did not want to become your monsters. The assembly remained silent, processing what they had heard. 3 centuries of mystery, explained in minutes. Humanity had not been arrogant or afraid. They had been protecting the galaxy from the truth. And the truth was terrifying. Earth's seat was always empty. The reason frightened the galaxy. Part 3. The data transmission arrived at Station Meridian 3 days after Lisa Warren's speech. It contained 280 years of military records, battle reports, ship designs, and casualty figures. The Assembly's best analysts worked around the clock to process the information. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. Al was present when the chief analyst, a named L, presented the findings to the Emergency Council. The young crystal being's form flickered with stress as he spoke. The humans were not exaggerating, Al said. If anything, they understated the scale of their war. The holographic display showed a map of the galaxy. Al had seen such maps countless times, but this one was different. Vast regions of space that the Assembly had always considered empty, the dark zones between spiral arms, the cold reaches beyond charted territory, were marked with thousands of engagement sites. The humans have fought the void swarm across distances we can barely comprehend, L continued. Their ships regularly travel to regions that would take our fastest vessels centuries to reach. Their war has been fought in places we did not even know existed. How is that possible? High Minister demanded. Our faster-than-light technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. No, High Minister, it is not. L's voice was hollow. Human ships move at speeds roughly 40 times faster than ours. A journey that would take us a year takes them 9 days. The council sat in stunned silence. The data includes records of over 30,000 major engagements, L continued. Human losses are documented at 417 million military personnel over the course of the war. They have lost 12,000 capital ships and countless smaller vessels. Director leaned forward, and the swarm. L hesitated. Based on the records, humanity has destroyed approximately 97% of all Void Swarm units in existence. The fragment that attacked our space represents less than 3% of the original machine intelligence. Al felt his ancient mind struggling to process this information. The swarm that had annihilated the Assembly's greatest fleet, that had destroyed dozens of worlds, that seemed unstoppable, was merely a tiny remnant fleeing from human pursuit. "Show us the ships," said quietly. The display changed to show human warships. They were nothing like the small trading vessels seen at border stations. The largest class, designated, was 3 times the size of Station Meridian itself. Its hull bristled with weapons that the analysts could not identify. Some seemed to manipulate gravity. Others appeared to create localized tears in the fabric of space itself. "Our weapons could not scratch the paint on these vessels," El said. "The fleet we lost at Prime could have engaged a single human, and the outcome would have been the same." Made a choking sound. "They could destroy us. If they wanted to, they could destroy every civilization in the Assembly." "Yes," El agreed. "They could, and they have had the capability to do so for over 2 centuries. But they did not," Al said. "They stayed away. They kept their distance and let us believe we were the masters of this galaxy." "Because they were protecting us," said slowly, understanding dawning on her scaled features. "Not from the swarm, from themselves, from the knowledge of what they could do to us if they chose." The council dispersed, each member lost in their own thoughts. Al remained behind, standing before the holographic display, watching images of human ships tearing through swarm formations. Lisa Warren found him there an hour later. "You have seen the records," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Al did not turn to look at her. "Your people are remarkable and terrifying." "I know." Lisa moved to stand beside him. "That is why we stayed away. We knew that if you saw what we had built, what we had become, you would never look at us the same way." "You were right." Al finally turned to face her. "I look at you now, and I see a species that could erase everything I have ever known. I see weapons that could crack me in half. I see soldiers who have spent generations learning to kill, and I am afraid." Lisa nodded slowly. "That fear is reasonable. We have earned it." "But I also see something else," Al continued. "I see a species that woke a nightmare and chose to face it instead of running. I see people who sacrificed their own worlds to protect others. I see 400 million soldiers who died fighting a threat that most of the galaxy did not even know existed." He reached out and touched her shoulder with a crystalline hand. "You call yourselves monsters, but monsters do not fight in the dark for 3 centuries to protect strangers. Monsters do not refuse to join an assembly because they fear their own power. Monsters do not come when called, even after being ignored for generations." Lisa's eyes glistened with moisture. Al had studied humans enough to know this meant strong emotion. "We lost so much," she said quietly. "We were curious once, hopeful. We wanted to explore the stars and make friends with everyone we met. Now our children grow up learning to fight before they learn to read. Our scientists design weapons instead of tools. Our artists paint scenes of battle because they have never known peace." "Then let us help you remember," Al said. "When this war is over, let us show you what peace looks like. Let us teach your children that the stars hold wonders as well as dangers. Let us be the friends you wanted to make all those centuries ago." Lisa was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled, and for just an instant, Al saw a glimpse of the curious explorer humanity had once been. "I would like that," she said. "I would like that very much." The first human warships arrived in assembly space 2 weeks later. They came without warning, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, where the swarm had gathered its forces. There were only 12 ships, a tiny fraction of humanity's total fleet, but each one was larger than anything the Assembly had ever built. Al watched from Station Meridian's observation deck as the battle began. The swarm had grown confident after destroying the Assembly's fleet. They had gathered thousands of ships in this system, preparing for the next phase of their expansion. The human ships did not slow down. They did not form defensive lines or wait for reinforcements. They simply attacked. The weapons they used understanding. One ship fired beams that seemed to erase matter from existence. Another released swarms of tiny machines that consumed swarm vessels from the inside. A third simply accelerated to impossible speeds and flew through enemy formations, its shields vaporizing anything it touched. The battle lasted 23 minutes. When it was over, every swarm ship in the system had been destroyed. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. A message arrived at Station Meridian shortly after. It was from the commander of the human fleet, a man named Jack whose face appeared on every screen in the station. "This sector is now under human protection," he said. His voice was calm, almost bored, as if destroying thousands of enemy ships was routine. "Remain in your designated safe zones. Do not interfere with military operations. The swarm will not trouble you again." The transmission ended. Al looked at the stars, where the wreckage of the swarm fleet was still cooling. He thought about fear and about the creatures who inspired it. He thought about 3 centuries of war fought in the darkness and about the people who had chosen to fight it. Humanity had stayed away because they did not want to be feared. But perhaps, Al thought, being feared was not always a curse. Perhaps sometimes it was a gift, one that could be given to protect those who could not protect themselves. The Assembly had spent 300 years wondering why Earth's seat was empty. Now they knew, and knowing changed everything. Earth's seat was always empty. The reason frightened the galaxy. Part 4. The war in Assembly space lasted 4 months. Human fleets moved through the galaxy like ghosts, appearing without warning, destroying everything the swarm had built, and vanishing before anyone could properly thank them. System by system, sector by sector, the machine intelligence was pushed back and destroyed. The Assembly watched, helpless and amazed, as the species they had dismissed for 3 centuries did what they could not. Human ships hunted down swarm vessels hiding in asteroid fields. Human soldiers boarded captured stations and fought hand-to-hand with machine horrors in zero gravity. Human commanders coordinated attacks across distances that should have made communication impossible. Al spent most of these months in the company of Lisa Warren. She had remained at Station Meridian as humanity's official representative, though she seemed uncomfortable with the title. He came to know her as more than a diplomat, as a window into what humanity had become. She told him stories late at night, when the station was quiet and the stars shone through the observation windows. She spoke of Earth, a blue and green world that had once been home to 8 billion humans. Now it was a fortress, ringed with defensive stations and weapon platforms, its surface by the preparations for an attack that had never come. She spoke of the colony worlds that had been sacrificed, 31 planets, evacuated and then destroyed by human hands to deny the swarm resources. The people who had lived there were still alive, scattered across other colonies, but they could never go home. Their homes no longer existed. She spoke of the soldiers who had been born during the war and would die during the war, never knowing a day of peace. Generations raised to fight, trained from childhood to kill, their entire existence defined by a conflict they had not started. "My grandmother remembered the time before," Lisa said one night. "She was a child when the swarm first attacked. She told me stories about a world where humans argued about silly things, politics and sports, and which foods were best. She said people used to dream about exploring the stars, meeting alien species, having adventures." "And now?" Al asked. "Now we dream about the war ending." Lisa's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "We dream about being able to stop fighting. We dream about letting our children be children." Al learned about the human military structure, a vast organization that had consumed nearly 30% of humanity's total resources for almost 3 centuries. Every human, regardless of their profession, received basic combat training. Every colony had defensive systems that could turn a planet into a fortress. Every ship, from the largest to the smallest cargo vessel, carried weapons. He learned about the human philosophy of war, which was unlike anything the Assembly had encountered. Most civilizations fought wars for resources, territory, or ideology. Humans fought wars to end them. Their goal was not to defeat the swarm, but to exterminate it completely, to ensure that no remnants survived to threaten anyone ever again. "We call it total war," Lisa explained. "We do not fight to win battles. We fight to make sure there are no more battles to fight." It was a brutal philosophy, Al realized, but it was also effective. The swarm had nearly destroyed the galaxy once before. When humans were finished, there would be nothing left to try again. As the months passed, reports came in from the front lines. Human fleets had pushed the swarm out of assembly space entirely. Now they were pursuing the remaining machines into the dark regions, where the war had been fought for centuries. And then, 6 months after Lisa Warren first sat in Earth's chair, a different kind of report arrived. The human hunting fleets had located the swarm's central nexus. It was in a region of space so far from known civilization that light from the nearest star would take thousands of years to reach it. The nexus was enormous, a structure larger than most solar systems, built from the remains of worlds consumed in ancient times. It was the heart of the void swarm, the place where they had been born millions of years ago. And humanity was going to destroy it. "The final assault will begin in 12 months, Lisa told the assembly. Her voice was steady, but Al could see the strain in her eyes. "Every available ship has been called to the front. This will be the largest military operation in human history." "What can we do to help?" Director asked. It was the first time any assembly member had offered assistance to humans. Lisa smiled sadly. "Nothing. This is our responsibility. We woke the swarm and we will end them." She paused. "But there is something you can do for us afterward." "Name it," said. "When the war is over, we will need help remembering who we were." Lisa's voice cracked slightly. "For 3 centuries, we have known nothing but fighting. We have forgotten how to be explorers. We have forgotten how to be curious. We have forgotten how to make friends." She looked around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of species. "We stayed away from you because we were afraid of what we had become. But now, when this is over, we will need your help to become something else, something better." She took a deep breath. "We will need you to remind us that the universe is not just a battlefield, that there are wonders worth seeing, that there are people worth knowing." Al rose from his seat. His crystalline form caught the chamber's lights, casting rainbows across the walls. 300 years ago, we invited humanity to join this assembly," he said. "You declined, and we spent centuries wondering why. Now we understand. You were protecting us from knowledge we were not ready to bear." He walked toward the center of the chamber, toward the chair where Lisa sat. "When your war is over, we will welcome you back. Not as warriors, but as friends. Not as protectors, but as partners. We will help you remember what peace feels like. We will help you dream new dreams." He extended a crystalline hand. "This is my promise to humanity. You have walked in darkness so that others could remain in light. When you emerge from that darkness, we will be here, waiting to show you the stars you fought to protect." Lisa Warren took his hand. Her grip was strong, hardened by generations of war, but her eyes held something that looked like hope. "Thank you," she said simply. "That is all we ever wanted." The next 12 months passed slowly. Reports from the front were sporadic. Human ships had engaged the swarm's final defenses. The battles were savage beyond anything seen before, casualties mounted on both sides. The Nexus was defended by every remaining swarm unit in existence, fighting with the desperation of a species facing extinction. and humanity pressed on, relentless and unstoppable, spending lives in ships like water to reach their goal. Al spent many nights at the observation deck, watching the stars and thinking about the soldiers fighting in the darkness. He wondered if they knew that strangers were thinking of them. He wondered if it mattered. Lisa Warren remained at Station Meridian, receiving updates and passing them to the assembly. She grew thinner as the months passed, the strain of waiting wearing on her. Sometimes Al found her at the observation deck at strange hours, staring at the stars with eyes that saw nothing. "They are dying out there," she said one night. "My brothers, my sisters, my friends, they are dying so far from home that we cannot even reach them to bury their bodies." "They are heroes," Al said. "They are humans," Lisa replied. "It is the same thing. It has always been the same thing." And then, on a day that seemed like any other, the message came. It was broadcast on every frequency, transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. A single sentence, sent from the darkness between stars. "The Void Swarm Central Nexus has been destroyed. The war is over." Lisa Warren collapsed in her chair and wept. Al stood beside her, one crystalline hand on her shoulder, and watched as the galaxy learned that the nightmare was finally at an end. Humanity had won. Earth's seat was always empty. The reason frightened the galaxy. Part 5. 7 years had passed since the end of the war. The galaxy was different now. The scars of the swarm's brief incursion into assembly space were still visible. Dead worlds orbited silent stars. Memorials floated where colonies had once thrived. But life had returned to something like normal. Trade routes reopened. Diplomatic disputes resumed. The assembly gathered to argue about the same things they had always argued about. But nothing was truly the same. The knowledge of humanity changed everything. Every species in the galaxy now knew what lurked in the dark between stars. They knew about the void swarm, about the ancient threat that had nearly consumed all life millions of years ago. And they knew about the species that had spent 3 centuries fighting to destroy it. Humanity had withdrawn after the war just as they had always done. Their warships vanished from assembly space. Their representatives stopped attending meetings. Earth's chair remained empty once more. But this time, the assembly understood why. Lisa Warren had explained it before she left. "We need time," she had said. "Time to mourn, time to rebuild, time to remember how to be something other than soldiers." Al missed her. He had spent 7 years wondering what had become of her, whether she had found the peace she so desperately needed. He thought about her often, especially when he passed by Earth's empty chair in the assembly chamber. And then, on a day that seemed like any other, a message arrived. A human ship was approaching Station Meridian. A single small vessel, not a warship but a transport of some kind. It was requesting permission to dock. Al was at the landing bay when the ship arrived. He watched as the vessel settled onto the platform, its hull scratched and worn from what looked like a long journey. The door opened, and a figure stepped out. She was young, perhaps 30 years old by human standards. She had bright eyes and an uncertain smile. She wore a simple blue uniform with a patch showing a blue and green planet, and she carried a small bag over one shoulder. She was not Lisa Warren. "Hello," the young woman said. Her voice was nervous but friendly. "My name is Grace Miller. I am here to take Earth's seat in the assembly." Al studied her. She did not move like a soldier. Her eyes did not carry the weight of centuries of war. When she smiled, it reached all the way to her eyes, filling them with genuine warmth. "Welcome, Grace Miller," Al said. "I am Ambassador Al of the... I have been waiting for someone like you for a very long time." Grace laughed, a bright sound that echoed through the landing bay. "I have to admit I am a little scared. I have never been off Earth before. This is my first time in space." "Truly?" Al was surprised. "How is that possible? Humanity has traveled farther than any species in the galaxy." The warriors traveled, Grace said. The soldiers and the ships, but people like me, we stayed home. We waited. We hoped that someday we would be able to see the stars without looking for enemies in them. She looked around the landing bay with wide, curious eyes. Lisa Warren told me about you, she said. She said you promised to help us remember what we used to be. She said you would show us the wonders we have been too busy to see. Al felt his crystalline heart glow with warmth. Lisa is well. She is old now, very old, but she is happy, Grace smiled. She spends her days teaching children about the universe, not about war or fighting or weapons, about stars and planets and the amazing creatures that live among them. She says it is the most important work she has ever done. They walked together through the station, Grace asking questions about everything she saw. She wanted to know about the different species, their cultures, their histories. She wanted to know about the foods they ate and the music they made and the stories they told their children. She was curious, hopeful, eager to make friends. She was everything humanity had once been, before the war took it away. The assembly was in session when they arrived. Al led Grace to the center of the chamber, to the chair that had been empty for 307 years. Representatives from every species watched as this young human approached. Grace stopped in front of the chair. She reached out and touched it, just as Lisa Warren had done 7 years ago. But where Lisa's touch had been weary and sad, Grace's was filled with wonder. "It is beautiful," she said softly. "It was made for you," Al replied. "Made for the humans who would someday come to fill it. We have been waiting a very long time." Grace sat down. The chair seemed to fit her perfectly, as if it had been designed with her in mind. "I am sorry I am late," she said to the assembly. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber, strong despite her nervousness. "Humanity has been busy. We had a war to win and a people to heal, but we are ready now. We are ready to be part of this galaxy." She pulled out a small device and pressed a button. A holographic image appeared above her, not weapons or warships, but a map of human space marked with scientific stations, cultural centers, and places of natural beauty. "I am not a soldier," Grace said. "I cannot tell you about battles or weapons or strategies, but I can tell you about the wonders humanity has discovered in our centuries of travel. I can tell you about worlds where the rain falls upward and oceans glow with bioluminescent light. I can tell you about nebulae painted in colors that have no names and stars that sing as they spin." She smiled, and her smile held no shadows. "I can tell you about humans who want to explore, not conquer, who want to learn, not fight, who want to meet new friends and see new wonders and fill the universe with laughter instead of weapons fire." She looked around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of species. "The war is over, the soldiers have come home, and now we are here ready to begin again." Her voice softened. "We hope you will have us." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Ambassador Al began to applaud. It was a human gesture, one he had learned from Lisa Warren. The sound of his crystal hands striking together was strange and musical. One by one, the other representatives joined him. High Minister struck his 4 hands together in an unusual rhythm. Director clicked her claws in the sign of approval. Throughout the chamber, species that had never seen a human now celebrated the arrival of one. Grace Miller sat in Earth's chair, tears streaming down her face, surrounded by the sounds of welcome. For 300 years, the galaxy had wondered why humanity stayed away. They had imagined it was arrogance, or fear, or something darker. They had not imagined that it was love, love so fierce that humanity was willing to become monsters to protect strangers they had never met. The void swarm was gone. The darkness between stars was empty and safe. And in the great hall of Station Meridian, surrounded by the representatives of every civilization in the galaxy, a young woman with bright eyes and a curious heart took her place among the stars. Earth's seat was no longer empty, and the galaxy was no longer afraid. Instead, they looked at the young human in their midst, and they felt something new, something that had been missing for 300 years. They felt hope. The war was over, the soldiers had become teachers, the weapons had been put away, and humanity, the species that had walked in darkness for 3 centuries, had finally come home to the light. Grace Miller looked out at the assembly, at the dozens of species who had gathered to welcome her. She thought about the soldiers who had died in the dark. She thought about Lisa Warren, teaching children on Earth. She thought about all the humans who had sacrificed everything so that someone like her could sit in this chair. And she smiled. "So," she said, her voice bright with excitement, "what did I miss?" The laughter that filled the chamber was the most beautiful sound the galaxy had heard in 300 years. The end.